Let's talk expectations versus reality. What exactly did you think life was going to be like when you married someone with kids? I'm betting the reality looks a lot different. Today, we'll talk all about that difference and how it ends up impacting your life as a stepmom. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. I want to start today by telling you a real quick story, and I don't really mean the fairy tale kind. My husband and I were having a conversation with his ex, and her mother was there. And I think I've mentioned that my husband and his ex have a fairly high conflict relationship. I mean, because of their history together, they really know how to push each other's buttons. And this particular conversation was pretty heated. So at one point, his ex's mother looked at me and kind of sneered, "You knew what you were getting into when you got involved with him." Yeah, not so nice. I managed to hold my tongue, which frankly was a huge accomplishment, and responded to her that I knew I was getting a wonderful man who was a loving father and 4 wonderful kids. Let's just say that is not what I wanted to say. But back to me knowing what I was getting into. Let's just say nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know about you, but my stepfamily expectations were very rosy, to say the least. I had a few friends and family members try to ask me if I was ready for all this. Or when I told them that he had 4 kids, their eyes got wide and they asked if I was sure I knew what I was getting into. Whatever. I was going to rock this. I knew it. I mean, I was ordering monogrammed Easter baskets and Christmas stockings for the kids so that we would be ready for our family holidays. And I knew, we were going to have Easter egg hunts in the backyard and Thanksgiving dinners and trim the trees together. I knew it was going to be amazing. I mean, whatever. I'm likable. I was good with kids. The kids had accepted me up to that point. So, what could go wrong? Well, a lot, as it turned out. I know I've told you my first couple years were really hard. And the kids did like me for the most part, but the fact was, they had not asked for me. And I don't think they were really looking for another parent on the scene here. My husband, as I said, has a challenging relationship with his ex, and she certainly hadn't been looking for me to come around, and so didn't exactly welcome me with open arms. And frankly, I don't necessarily blame her. That's a hard position to be in too. And the holidays, I think I've told you that our first Thanksgiving dinner, one of my stepsons ended up with a microwave cheese quesadilla because he refused to eat anything I had made. It wasn't that he didn't like my cooking. He just didn't like any of the Thanksgiving dinner offerings. Now, these are dishes that were my traditional Thanksgiving dishes. I was really proud of them. These are dishes that have been in my family for several generations, and it's awesome stuff. I look forward to this meal every year. My mom's spinach and artichoke casserole. Seriously, it is no joke. It is maybe one of my favorite dishes of the whole year. It had not occurred to me, however, that these were not what the kids were used to having on Thanksgiving. These were not necessarily their must-serve Thanksgiving dishes, right? They did like my pumpkin pie and my Coca-Cola cake, which I will tell you is always a crowd pleaser. But anyway, I couldn't understand what had gone wrong. Why was this not a great Thanksgiving? Why was this not a perfect family? We had all of the ingredients. We just couldn't get there. I was thoughtful and generous from the get-go. I'm lucky. My job has always involved doing and going to a lot of fun events. So I was able to take the kids to some special events and events that they seemed to really enjoy. I was really involved in their lives. I went to all the sporting events, all the school stuff, all the doctor's appointments. I even instituted a Friday family game night, although I will say that was part of my optimism at having this perfect Rockwell family. It was a little short-lived. It did not occur to me until much, much later that my mistake was not that I hadn't been doing all the right things. It was that I had had totally unrealistic expectations. And this is something that I think many of us stepmoms suffer from, right? I don't know if you have, but I think most of us in some fashion don't really anticipate exactly what it is that we're getting into. And I hesitate to even label it a mistake because it is so common. Us stepmoms, we have dreams of like this happy family and these amazing holidays and family dinners and hugs and close relationships. And in an ideal world, we would talk to our spouses before we jump into this life together about all those expectations so that we can get a better sense of reality before we embark on this stepmom journey. I don't know about you, but that is not the world I live in. Our prospective spouses may not know the answer either. They also want things to be great. I remember before we got married, Craig and I talking about, the adjustment that this was going to be for the kids. And I remember him feeling totally confident that, kids are adaptable and they'll be fine. Okay, great. Well, yes, in some sense they are, but in other senses, very much no. The good news is you can course correct. And when you do, you'll be able to solidify the foundation of your relationship and your family. And doing that is really important long term. I talk a lot to my clients about taking a step back from whatever challenge they're focused on and really focusing on rebuilding their family foundation. And when you can shore things up so that you and your partner can work together on the big problems and so that you're actually functioning as a true partnership and you're on the same page, then you can actually do this together. And dealing with your expectations is a huge part of that. Let's be clear. It does not matter if you just got married or if you've been knee-deep in stepmomming for years. You can revisit this stuff at any time. And doing it will ultimately help you communicate with each other better, and that's going to help you tackle all of this stuff together. And isn't that the whole point? You're supposed to be partners, right? So let's talk a little bit about how you can go back and align or realign your expectations with reality. So the first step is to grieve. I know that sounds weird, right? But let me explain. Whether it's at the outset or if you're already knee-deep in stepmom life, when you realize that your reality has not quite lined up with what you thought it was going to be, you're allowed to grieve. And in fact, you really should. Grieve for your former life that was free of step-family responsibilities and free of all this conflict. The conflict that, frankly, you didn't create, but you have to be a part of, right? Grieve for what you thought step-family life was going to be like, but isn't. Or the co-parenting that's been a lot harder than you thought it was going to be. I didn't realize for a long time that I needed to grieve my former life, the one where I didn't answer to anyone, where I wasn't responsible for anyone, where I had total control over what happened to me, what I did, when I did it. It was orderly for the most part and overall pretty good. Craig does ask me every once in a while if I wish my life were still that simple, that easy. And the answer is yes and no. I did have to grieve a little bit that things were suddenly really complicated, sometimes really hard, and definitely a lot louder than it was before, right? But, without all these complications, I wouldn't have Craig or the kids, and I think that life would be exponentially less fulfilling for me. You might also grieve the fact that family life is way different than you imagined. If you were like me and pictured Rockwell painting family holidays, but ended up with holidays that looked more like Married with Children or the Griswolds, it's okay to be sad about that too. It is not your fault that reality hasn't lined up with what you thought it was going to be. Because you know what? It is totally normal to think that things are going to be amazing. And I don't know that that's unique to stepmoms either. I think marriage in general has its own set of expectations, right? When I was little and I put Barbie in her wedding dress and she drove off with Ken in her pink Corvette, they were going on an awesome honeymoon. And then they were coming home to decorate their first Barbie mansion where they would relax by the Barbie pool before they started thinking about Barbie and Ken offspring. Yeah, that's not real life for anyone, right? You've got to learn how to live with somebody, how you're going to tackle household duties and bills, and all the real life stuff that comes along, all the grossness of living with someone else, right? But on top of that, stepmoms, it's a little more complicated. We have our partner's children, and that means that our spouses may be taking calls from their mom on our honeymoon, or the kids may show up for the week with you the day you return from the wedding. And if there is one stepmom out there whose expectations weren't in any way crushed by blended family reality, I'd really like to meet her. I'm just saying. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that things are different than you thought they'd be. Maybe the kids are more challenging. Maybe they don't like you. Maybe the ex is horrific. Maybe your partner doesn't back you up on things. Whatever it is, even if it's none of those things, even if it's something totally different, just take a minute. Take a minute to mourn. Whatever's different about your life now versus your life pre-step family, you have absolute permission to be a little sad that things look different. You are totally allowed to embrace your emotions, whatever those might look like. Take them on, acknowledge reality is different, live into it, and then make the conscious decision to move on, right? Next, I want you to flip the script on some of your internal dialogue. Now that sounds a little complicated, but it's really not, okay? It's tempting to focus really only on how reality hasn't measured up. But if you flip the script and take a minute and think about how your life has been so much better than you thought it was going to be, when you look at your assumptions through a different lens, you might be able to see blessings that have come out of that reality that you could not have anticipated when you got into step family life. For starters, I know one thing for me has been I have seen how my husband handles adversity, and he is a rock. I mean, he can handle almost anything, and he has my back no matter what. And that is something that I may not have realized otherwise. And I've had some pretty amazing experiences along the way bonding with these kids, and I never would have had that otherwise. I've been able to play a part in their education and a lot of their firsts. Now, I didn't get to see their first steps or their first days of school, but I've been there for a lot of other firsts. I took my stepdaughter to her very first concert, which was amazing. And I took my stepson to the World Series to see his favorite baseball teams play. I mean, I just could never take that for granted. It was amazing to see those experiences through their eyes. We took two of the kids to Paris for New Year's a couple years ago, and it was amazing to watch them take it all in and to see the world through their eyes. And they're old enough that we had some really awesome and amazing discussions about history and life in Paris. I mean, it really was incredible. When you can kind of flip the script like that and focus on the positive, it may help you adopt a more productive perspective going forward. And I know, depending on your circumstances, finding that little bit of positive might be hard. I know that things can be dark sometimes, but take a little bit of time to yourself and really think about it. And even if what you find that's positive is so small, grab onto it and build on it and see what else you can think of. See what else you can find. Because if you can take that grief and turn it on its head, it'll help you move on. Now, after you've flipped the script a little bit on your grief, I want you to think about resetting your foundation with your partner. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing that you do is kind of go back, look at your expectations, and really understand them. I don't know about you, but my husband and I did not have any kind of conversation about our expectations before we got married. We didn't have any conversation about what we each thought that life together was going to look like. We were both so excited about the wedding and the honeymoon, and, we just felt sure that we were buying a new house right when we were getting married and moving into it, and we just knew that things were going to be great. We didn't have that conversation about, what if the kids didn't accept me? What was my role actually going to look like? How were we going to deal with his ex? We did not talk about any of it. We just jumped into building our family and didn't even think about those kinds of discussions. And I do not think that is unusual. And I'm guessing that you may have had some of those discussions, but I'm guessing that you did not have thorough discussions. And it's not because anybody's trying to hide the ball or trick somebody into committing or any of that stuff, but If you think about it, those topics are not always super pleasant. And really, it can be the last thing you want to talk about when you're picking out your wedding dress or, going to tastings for your wedding reception and planning your honeymoon and thinking about life together. Now, Craig and I did go back after the fact and course correct, and you can too. It was a gradual process, and we had several conversations around it all. And I can tell you that after those conversations, I think we both felt more grounded and more unified as a couple and ready to kind of tackle things together. So, what I encourage you to do is talk to your spouse and be frank. What were the misconceptions that you both came in with? Because it's not just you coming in with misconceptions, he may have had some too. What are your fears and your worries now that you're both in it? In order to build a solid family life, frankly, this goes for whether you're in a blended family or not, you've got to understand what you expect from each other. And you may need to challenge those expectations together so that you can approach things a little more realistically, at least maybe more realistically than I did. And once you're able to get more grounded together, you'll both be better able to approach your family challenges and you'll be able to do it together. And you'll both understand better what you each expect from each other. All of this, communication is the key. You should be open and positive when you're talking about this with each other. These are going to be difficult conversations, so the way you communicate with each other is really important. Listen, be open, be positive, challenge each other's assumptions, and then decide together what your reality is going to be. And so this leads to the last step, which is to chart your new reality. Once you have kind of gotten your communication down, broken down some of your assumptions, then talk about how you're going to go forward together. What is your role and what should your role be? As you talk about all that, you could shape your role together in a way that allows you to take care of your own needs, but also be a part of the family in a meaningful and intentional way. So you'll want to kind of start out in talking about how you can support each other. Think about, what do you need from each other to feel supported? What are the ways that you already feel supported by the other? Are there things that you each need to be flexible on? How are you going to resolve conflict? How are you going to communicate with each other and with the kids? What do you want that to look like going forward? And when you're having the conversation about going forward, there are a lot of other things you're going to want to talk about. And it might be helpful to maybe sit down and make a list of some of the just day-to-day things that you need to decide how you want them to look in your household. So, things like, what are the house rules? Maybe that's something that you sat down and thought about when you first got together, first moved in together. I don't know. I mean, we thought a little bit about it, but we certainly didn't do a great job. And we went back and revisited it, and it really helped. What's going to be expected of each family member around the house? Think about your role. What is your ideal relationship look like with the kids? What is your role in discipline going to be? What kind of frameworks do you guys need to have in place to help make sure that family interactions are positive and healthy? You're going to want to think about your finances. Do the kids' activities and clothes and gifts come from you jointly, or are they just coming from your partner and you're doing stuff separately? What are the financial arrangements with your partner's ex? I mean, do they just interact on maybe child support and alimony, or do they also split costs on other stuff? I mean, this is something you really should discuss before you get into it. But, if you haven't, this is a good opportunity to talk about how all of that is going to impact your life together. What's your involvement going to be in school and doctor's appointments? Things like that. So it's really talking about your role, talking about what you want your family to look like, and really kind of shoring up your life together. And again, these conversations are really best done before you move in together, before you get married, before you get into all this. But I really think it's rare that happens. If you're anything like me, you may have to come in after the fact and, have some of these hard conversations. But it is never too late to have those conversations. I don't care if you just got married. I don't care if you just moved in together. or if you've been married 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, there's never a time when you can't have these conversations. Shore up your foundation and get back on track. And I know you've got this. We've got this together. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to the Stepmom Diaries so that you don't miss a single episode. That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, visit thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on your favorite platform. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.